Okay. So this is the project that we have worked on for a company called 𝐂𝐮𝐫𝐫𝐢𝐜. So what we did was, don't get overwhelmed by it. It's kind of a very simplified version of the architecture diagram. So we will basically host our services in AWS Cloud. All right. And then inside the AWS Cloud, we have our VPC, which is our virtual private cloud. In that, we have a region. We work on a region. Okay. And then if you come here in the public subnet, we will have an application load balancer. This is where all the traffic will come to. Okay, since these are internet-facing applications, we will put our load balancer in the public subnet. Okay, and then the traffic would move from there into our private subnet. So private subnet is where we will deploy our Kubernetes cluster, our Amazon EKS cluster. This Amazon EKS cluster has multiple virtual machines or multiple servers, okay, in different subnets. These are multiple servers that we have, and inside these servers is where our applications run. Pods are nothing but applications. We'll jump into it. What exactly is that? So we will work on what are pods. So these are our applications. This is one more application. This is one more application. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 applications, and these 4 applications talk to each other. Okay, and then we have our database, which is MySQL RDS. And then this.
Hi. Please take a few seconds to like this video, ask your doubts or questions in the comments. Our trainers will answer it. Your response helps us to post more videos on this topic. More likes we get, more videos we can post. And do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks.
Whole thing, the whole application, whole Kubernetes cluster, and the infrastructure, the servers, the application, everything is monitored using New Relic. But we will also go through how to monitor this cluster using Prometheus as well. Okay, and then to store our static data, we've used S3 bucket. Sometimes the applications would need some kind of static data, like some kind of files or images. They will be stored in the S3 bucket. Okay, and then coming to the CI/CD, so we have our code in GitHub. We have our code in GitHub. So whenever an application developer does something in the code, so what we do is we use code, any kind of CI/CD tool here. So here I've mentioned AWS code build, but we will also be using a traditional Jenkins, and we will also be using GitHub Actions, a different kind of CI/CD tool, and then build our Docker image, our application image, and push it into a repository. So this repository, it could be an ECR. Okay, ECR is nothing but Elastic Container Registry, or we could put it in Docker Hub. So this is where you store your images. Okay. Again, just a disclaimer: if you're not getting, if some of these words are jargons for you, if you've never heard of them, if you're not able to understand, don't worry. The objective of this course is that we demystify these things, that we break down this and then make you understand. But I'm just trying to give you a big picture on what you would be learning. Okay, so we will push our container image into ECR, and from there we will deploy those applications into our Kubernetes cluster. So this is how the flow is going to be. And then we will also use the basic tools that are given by AWS, which is CloudTrail for auditing and Amazon CloudWatch to actually watch some of the logs and all that stuff. Okay, and then, so this is what we're going to do. And then the whole infrastructure like VPC, and then comes your subnets, and then comes your servers, and then comes your application load balancer. Okay, and then defining what is a public subnet, defining what is a private subnet. We'll do all this stuff through Terraform. And that's how you're going to learn Terraform. By building this entire architecture, that's how you're going to learn Terraform. So we will start off with the basics of Terraform, and then we'll go into more advanced topics of Terraform. Okay, because we want our code to be repeatable. When I mean repeatable, let's say you are a DevOps engineer and you're working on building this Terraform code. Okay, what do? You will make sure that your code can be used by others as well. Okay, we will make it repeatable. We will make it usable by other people. Okay, so in order to do that, you need to make your code a little more complicated. When I mean complicated, you introduce some features which let your code reusable. It is not like, okay, only Kiran can use, but the whole team can use. Because at the end of the day, most of you guys, I mean, maybe some of you guys will still work in silos by yourself, but most of you guys will be working in a team. Okay, so whatever you're building, you will be contributing to your team so that everybody could use it. Okay, that's the objective of it. Okay, so we will learn what is Terraform. Okay, let me just give me a minute. So I'll just walk you through how we are going to proceed. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to learn is Terraform. Now, why do we need to learn Terraform first? Is because this is the basic building blocks to build your infrastructure. So using Terraform, what we are going to do is, using Terraform, we will build our infrastructure. Okay, this is what we're going to build using, because we need an infrastructure to work on. So, okay, so while we build this infrastructure, we will learn all the concepts of Terraform. We will understand what is Terraform. At the end of building the infrastructure for our foundations, you'll be able to understand how to use Terraform. Okay, so once we are done building infrastructure, then we will learn Docker. Okay, why Docker? Because Docker is the fundamental block or the foundation for you to understand what is Kubernetes. Without Docker, without understanding what are containers, without understanding what are images, without understanding what are image repositories, there is little that you can do in Kubernetes. Okay, so that's the reason we will work on Docker. And then eventually we will work most of our time on Kubernetes. Okay, because in order for you to learn Kubernetes, you need to know Docker. In order to manage all this infrastructure, you need to know Terraform. Okay, so our starting point will be to work on Terraform, build our infrastructure, and then move on to Docker, and then from there move on to Kubernetes. And then finally, we'll have our capstone project, which I've just shown you a while ago. This is what we're going to achieve at the end of the day. Okay, and yeah, we'll try to make some variations. We'll try to deploy different kinds of applications. We'll try to use different kinds of CI/CD tools so that you will be familiar with there are hundreds of tools in the market, so it's virtually impossible for me to go through each and every tool, each and every kind of application. But we'll try to at least play around with the most used tools like Jenkins and like GitHub, like code build and all that stuff. And also different kinds of application like a Node.js applications or a Java application or a WordPress or a Drupal application or a Go application. So we'll try to play around with different kinds of applications so that you'll be more familiar working on these things. All right, so let me know if you have any questions. If not, we can go to the next section.
Yes, Kiran, I have one question.
Mhm.
So I am basically does not know anything about AWS. I am training in Azure. So
Okay.
would that affect me anyway?
I would say I would say not in a lot, but if you know what is Azure, you know what is a virtual machine in an Azure, you know what is NSG in an Azure, then those should be good enough for you to get into this. Okay, but yes, so when we actually work on Terraform, so they're not major differences. For example, in Azure, you have these resource groups, you have the subscriptions, and all the tenant and all that stuff, which are kind of not there in Azure. In AWS, you have directly, you jump into your virtual networks, which is your VPC, and then you jump into your subnets and all that stuff. So, I've worked on both Azure and AWS. If you personally ask me, I don't think it'll be a lot of difference, because when it comes to Docker and Kubernetes, it's agnostic. You could be on AWS or Azure, it doesn't matter. The only area that I think you might be a little shaky is Terraform, because we are primarily working on AWS building infrastructure. But since you've already worked on Azure, which has more or less the similar components, like, because what we are going to do is we are going to work on virtual machines, and then eventually we'll work on creating an EKS cluster. So it's like creating an AKS cluster. So yeah, when it comes to Docker and Kubernetes, you wouldn't have any problem. But when it comes to Terraform, you would still understand the concepts, and you can still replicate those concepts in Azure as well.
My only worry is, like, whenever you're going to explain something, you're going to reference AWS, and I have no knowledge of AWS. I know that Kubernetes and Dockers are platform independent,
Yeah.
but whenever you're going to, because it's a continuation of a different course. So I'm just trying to understand, like, the references that you're going to give is just for AWS, but could you also mention, like, okay, in Azure, you can do this way, or in AWS is this way?
Sure. I can do that as well. Yeah, of course.
Perfect. Thanks.
And sir, coming to infrastructure as code also, I'm a Azure DevOps engineer, and in our we implement Pulumi infrastructure as code.
Okay.
I'm known with Terraform, but I'm not that fluent with Terraform. But as we discussed about Azure and AWS, right? It doesn't differ much if we are known with virtual machine subnets and everything. The same way, can you please let me know? I'm working with Pulumi infrastructure as code, and now we are going to implement Terraform. So how much does it differ? I'm known, like, the commands would differ, and apart from that, anything else differs?
It's more simpler. I think Terraform for me is more simpler. I haven't worked much on Pulumi, but from what I know, Terraform is more simpler, and it is easy to learn. Since you already know what is infrastructure as a code, it is not very difficult. And the way I'm going to teach you is, I'm going to teach you in a way in which you can actually do it. So what I mean by that is, in order to learn Terraform, you need to heavily depend on the documentation. So here, we are not going to remember anything. I'm not going to tell you, okay, this is what you got to remember and all that. We will purely take the documentation, read the documentation, and use the documentation. And you might think, okay, what is there? Even I can learn doing that. Of course you can, but what we're going to do is we'll teach you how to use the documentation, and then there are a lot of variables that are there. So when I mean variables, there are a lot of customizations that you might need to do, a lot of tweaks you might to do according to your environment. So that is where this course will be helpful, where we will tell you how to customize the code which is there in the documentation and use it according to your needs. So that's where you need to put in some logic, put in some conditions, put in some flow, so that you'll be able to use the code accordingly for your own environment. Yeah, to answer your question, it shouldn't be difficult at all. I mean, I would say Terraform is much easier, and you'll be able to pick it up very fast.
I have one question. Like when actually working with using these tools, like what are the errors we faced and how to resolve it? Like you are covering that also. What are the issues faced while working Terraform? Like and
we will get a lot of issues.
Yeah. How to handle that? How to handle that?
We'll see that how to handle that. So there's no way, there is no rule. See, if you're already working, you know that. Let's say you get one issue, you get one error. How do you fix that? Is there any playbook to fix that? There is no playbook to fix it. You will actually, each error is different. For example, there is, it is a configuration related issue. If there is a syntax issue, then you would see the syntax.
Yeah. So
okay,
what are the steps involved? How to approach, like even the common errors, like then we know how to go ahead and how to look back into the documentation and what are the APIs or everything. Like some standard errors.
What I'm trying to say is, if it is a syntax issue, you will actually know it. There are a lot of Terraform validates, Terraform tools which will tell you if it is a syntax issue. If it is a logic issue, then we'll have to debug the code. If there is any specific error, we have to put it in Google. We have to use different tools like Stack Overflow and all those things and debug the issue. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I understood your question, but the way I would do personally is there is no set way to debug. When an issue comes, that's where we as engineers come into picture. We actually dig into it.
Yeah, I'm looking into debugging only, the process of debugging in Terraform.
So there will be many projects. So we are the only one here, okay, who have a lot of projects which we have designed in this kind of a net tech kind of, that's the main goal. Okay, we are LWPLABS, which is learn with projectlabs.com. There will be multiple projects which we have to do. Now, when we do project, Kiran is going to just explain this project, and then we will kickstart our things. When you do project, you will get issues, and when you get issues, you will be doing the debugging. Once the debugging is done, automatically you will be getting that experience, and all your answers will be cleared. Right?
Okay, fine.
All right, guys. Rahul, since you are there, I'll just step out for 2 minutes. My mouth is dried up. I need to get some water. So if anybody has questions, Rahul is there. He'll just answer. I'll be back in 2 minutes, guys.
So yes. So guys, if you see here, okay, this is the project which we have implemented, and our ultimate goal is to implement this project. What will happen here when you do this? This is a big project. Even if you do not do other projects, and if you do this project, you're going to get that experience, and you're going to explain whatever is required in your interview. Okay, you don't have to say a lot of things in your interview. You can say just that, okay, we have implemented this project, and this is the project which is there in our company, with which you will be going and trying to get the job. Okay, so here, what all things we are integrating? If you start from the extreme left side, okay, so there are 3-person symbol. Okay, they are trying to access a website. Think like abc.com. This abc.com is running where in the right side, if you see, there is a private subnet mentioned, EKS node groups, that sky blue color box. Okay, it is running there. So ultimately, some users are there, they are trying to connect to some websites. These websites are running in that blue box. Okay. Now, how will they access? That's the challenge. How we will deploy the code to that blue box? That's the challenge. How we will integrate the monitoring tool so that if suppose something breaks in that blue box, or something is down in that blue box, we should get an alert at our mailbox or at Slack channel or any other way. We will be integrating New Relic, which is at the extreme right side. Okay, the New Relic which is mentioned, that is a monitoring tool. If suppose somebody is asking you that which monitoring tool you are using, from this particular course, what is the takeaway? The takeaway is to implement this project. That's it. Even if you miss all the other minor projects or whatever we are teaching, doesn't matter. You have to ultimately complete this project. This project is done, your CV is ready, start applying job. All the tools you will be integrating, the Cloudflare. Cloudflare is that caching mechanism that, okay, fine, you are in India, you are in United States, you are in Germany. Okay, how can you make sure that your website who's running in that blue box, and that if that blue box is in North Virginia, still your India folks will be able to see that the website is fast. Okay, so all these things are real example. The example which we, the case study which we have implemented for some of our companies, some of our clients, you will be implementing the same. Do that, put that in CV, start applying job. Okay, that's the ultimate goal of our entire course. We don't want to make you an expert in Kubernetes. We don't want to make you an expert in New Relic. We don't want to make you an expert in Cloudflare and any other thing. Okay, that is not of our goal. Yeah, our goal is to give you an experience on any one of our project which we have implemented. You will learn that. While doing that, you will debug, you will do troubleshooting, you will do whatever you want to become expert. You go ahead, become expert, and start applying job to get the job, to become job ready, to become so that you don't have to take job support from someone while you are working. You don't have to take proxy interviews and other things. Okay, you will be self-sufficient for giving your own interview, working by your own. So Kiran, are you back? We can, I think, most of the people have already understood the project. I think we can quickly start over with today's like Terraform, whatever the next module is. I think if anybody is having any doubt from this particular project, maybe we can actually one more time we can explain, Kiran, this project if you have not explained, and then we can quickly start the Terraform module, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. So I've already gone through I mean, if anybody has any questions regarding the project, I'll be happy to answer. If not, we will keep referring to this project again and again. So we'll revisit this and try to break it into smaller pieces and do this project. So we'll keep coming back to this. But if anybody has any questions regarding the project, I'm happy to help. Otherwise, we can proceed with what we are going, what's for the rest of the agenda is.
Hi,
Yes,
good
Kiran,
evening, Kiran. Can you please go through this reverse?
All right, one person at a time, please.
Can you please just go through the project again? Please, thank you.
Sure. I mean, so again, the project is free. At the end of the day, this project is nothing but we have deployed. So there's a company called 𝐂𝐮𝐫𝐫𝐢𝐜𝐮, and they had around 4 or 5 applications. Okay, each one used for different purpose. There was an inventory where the customers would come and go through the inventory. And then there was investor relationships, because it's a trading company. They wanted to show forth their profits and all that. So there was an investor relationship. And there were some other internal applications that they used for within the employees. So they had around 4 to 5 applications. And then they were running these applications on traditional virtual machines. Okay, now the issue with the traditional virtual machines is that they were not able to scale those applications. They're not able to manage those applications. So what we suggested to them is that you run these applications as containers so that you can scale these applications. When I use the word scale, that means, okay, today I am just one server. Tomorrow I have some kind of big billion sale or some kind of event that has happened which attracts a lot of traffic. Okay, so my one server will not be able to cater to the traffic. So what I do, I scale the applications. So in order to automatically scale and make it more elastic, we have suggested them to move on to a Docker platform. And in a better way to manage Docker applications, or the best way to manage Docker applications, is to run them on a Kubernetes cluster. So in this project, what we are going to do is, our ultimate goal is to run those 4 applications. So that's a big picture. You keep that in your mind. That should be at the end. That's the ultimate objective, is that you need to run these applications. Now, how efficiently can I run those applications is where I need Kubernetes. So I would build a Kubernetes cluster. And I don't want the world to access the Kubernetes cluster, put it in a private subnet. And then I need to allow the traffic to reach the Kubernetes cluster. So how do I manage the traffic? I go through a load balancer. Okay, all my traffic comes through a load balancer. Okay, and then ultimately I'm running a production application. A production application needs to be monitored. Okay, the cluster needs to be monitored, the Kubernetes cluster. The virtual machines inside the Kubernetes cluster needs to be monitored. Okay, the applications, these blue box applications, these needs to be monitored. My database needs to be monitored. So all these things to be monitored. Okay, when I mean monitored, okay, if this application is using 90% of CPU, I need to know that, because if some application is using 90% of the CPU or 90% of the memory, then there is something wrong. There could be a lot of traffic, or there could be some rogue zombie process. So I need to know that as a DevOps engineer or as a cloud administrator. Okay, if my server goes down, I need to know that. Okay, if there is a lot of contention in the database, as an administrator, I need to know that. How do I know that? I need to monitor this whole infrastructure. Now, how do I monitor? I'm using a tool called New Relic. Okay, we would also use Prometheus, but yeah, in this project, we will use New Relic to monitor, because I am handling a production application, and a production application needs to be monitored. Okay, and then how do I seamlessly create a workflow where my developers would be able to push their changes into these applications? Okay, for that, I create a CI/CD pipeline. Okay, what is a CI/CD pipeline? Continuous integration and continuous deployment. So we will use different kinds of CI/CD tools to make sure my application developer is able to push his code into these applications. Okay, and then finally, I have this Cloudflare. Cloudflare is a content delivery network service. What it means is, let's say you are watching Netflix. Where is the Netflix server? It's most probably in the US. Okay, the servers are located in US. All their movies are all loaded in US. And let's say I am in the US and I'm watching a movie. So what happens when I open my app? What it does is it goes to since the server is in the US, it goes to the server, downloads the movie onto my local session, and then I watch the movie. I buffer the movie. I stream the movie. But let's say somebody is in India or Australia. If they have to watch the movie, then what happens in a typical scenario is that your connection would come all the way till the US, and then you would start streaming. Okay, now that creates a lot of latency. That is, it becomes very slow because you're coming all the way to US. But a content delivery network, what it does is it has this small, if I would use the word small, servers in each and every location. There is one in Asia, one in Europe, one in Asia Pacific, which is somewhere in Singapore or somewhere, so that if somebody wants to watch the movie, they don't have to come their connection need not come all the way to US, but they can go to this nearest station and download the movie from there. So that's called content delivery network. So we will explore that as well. If you're working for a global organization, you would use some kind of content delivery network. Either you would use Cloudflare, or there is a product from AWS, which is called CloudFront. Yeah, CloudFront. So you would use that. So this is the 10,000 foot of this project. And our objective at the end of the day is to get this project done. And while we get this project done, we will learn Terraform, we will learn Docker, we will learn Kubernetes, we will learn CI/CD pipelines for Kubernetes, and we will learn New Relic and Prometheus to monitor this infrastructure. All right?
Hello, Kiran.
Okay.
It's like you will also explain it's like how to debug the issues, because in real-time interview, it's like they ask, can you tell me some of the scenarios you faced in the
Sure, of course.
organization?
So, yeah, you trust me, if we are 5 days into the 5 hours or 5 days in 5 sessions into the course, you guys see, at the end of the day, I want you to do this in your own laptops. I mean, if you watch me doing, there is nothing that you will get it. I mean, you might just get it for a minute while I do that, but it will not help you in any way. So I want you guys to do it with your hands. So while you actually do it, so let's say we are about 20 folks in this batch. And this 20 folks, while you guys personally do it on your laptops, I'm sure at least out of 25 people will get a lot of issues. I'm not telling those 15 won't get, but I'm just giving you a basic conservative number. 5 people will get issues, and we can work on those issues. And see, I work in a very live environment where we host close to 100 to 150 applications in our environment. And I have a lot of scenarios and a lot of issues that I personally face. So I can replicate those issues in our projects. I will create scenarios where there will be some error, and together in a session, we can work on fixing that issue. So we can force errors into our environment so that we can debug those issues. But you don't even have to worry about forcing errors, because since we are working on projects, you will face a lot of issues and we will debug those issues. Okay.
Kiran, I have a doubt. See, actually, if once we finish this and let's say if we get the job, so I don't think like we will be like 3 years or 2 years experience. So if we get the job, like we may need some help. So will that be provided?
See, you will, in fact, if you ask me, since you are working on projects and not learning what is Kubernetes, not learning what is Terraform, not learning what is Docker, you are actually at least 2-3 years experience in the market. Trust me, because you're not learning concepts, you're learning projects. So in the real world, you do projects. So if you ask me, you are close to 2-3 years of experience at the end of the course. But yeah, for your answer, you can reach out to Rahul or Simran or Emmanuel. They can talk to you in length for that. You can talk to them. So they might help you with this. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, guys.
It's like if someone is able to show only 1.5 years of experience, that is the maximum he can show. It's like, is this course still helpful?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, I know nobody who is 1.5 years old in the industry would work on this. Trust me.
So it's like,
Because
will they believe that this guy has really worked on it?
if you see, for example, if you work in my project, let's say in our project we use all these things, and let's say you join my project, and if you have a good team, then they will let you work on all these things. If it is a very restricted environment where the manager doesn't want things to break, then yeah, he will stop you from putting your hands. But in our project, my manager would let everybody do everything. So if you work with me in my company, at 2 years, you'll be able to know everything in and out.
Because I've attended all these sessions, previous sessions.
Okay.
So it's like,
Okay. I mean, you can. I mean, I see. At the end of the day, it's how you convince people.
because
If you're able to tell them
this
what you
project,
know clearly, they will believe you.
it's like, means will you help us to build that story now? It's like I have
Of
no
course, sure. I
experience
mean, I
of
have plenty of
IT. I've
stories
never
to tell.
worked in any organization.
Sure. I mean, I have plenty of stories. I mean, I can walk you through those plenty of stories.
It's like this project mainly stands on the operations part, it's like, and the
Correct.
previous sessions were on the development side.
Correct. This is more of operations. You're right. Yeah.
Kiran sir, I have a question. Like you told, we will write a Terraform script to create the infrastructure, and this picture is showing like deployment part, not the building infrastructure part. So,
for
yeah,
example,
my question is,
go
my
ahead.
question is, like, we can have a separate pipeline for Terraform as well. And
Oh yeah, of course.
So this pipeline
So
will be
this
separate.
diagram is an application architecture. So in this, yes, I haven't shown you the CI/CD pipeline for infrastructure because, and this is very difficult to include everything into one architecture diagram. But at the end of the day, this infrastructure, the VPC, the subnets, the NAT, the internet gateway, the NAT gateway, the private subnets, the EC2 instances, the cluster, and all that, we might as well put it into a Terraform pipeline, and we can do that. In fact, we'll do that as well. It should be fairly.
So my question, So my question was like, we rarely do changes in the infrastructure in real world, but like we created a pipeline for Terraform, and we just need to do changes on developer part, not on Terraform part. So how the pipeline will go on? Like they will be managed in a way like if Terraform part is completed, then this pipeline should run.
Yeah, for example, let me give you a scenario on how we do in our company. Okay, so what we do is we host. So we work in a very highly compliant system. So when I mean compliant system, every month there will be a lot of vulnerabilities, bugs that come in your applications and in your infrastructure as well, your EC2 machines and all that. There are a lot of vulnerabilities that come. So we have a compliance team which tells us that, boss, you cannot run your production applications on infrastructure which is highly vulnerable. When I mean vulnerable, they're prone to attacks if you have those vulnerabilities. Yeah. So what they tell us is you have to patch it every month. No vulnerability can be beyond 30 days. So that's a rule in our organization. So what we do is we've created pipelines, okay, a blue-green pipeline. So 1 month we will deploy our Terraform pipelines, which will, what it does is it will spin up an EKS cluster, and then it will spin up multiple nodes in the EKS cluster, and then it will spin up an EKS Fargate containers, okay, and then it will configure target groups. It will install certain applications inside the Kubernetes cluster, like ingress controller, New Relic agents, CrowdStrike monitoring, all the other fancy stuff. We install those things and create target groups and attach it to the load balancer. So all this is done through Terraform. Now, once this is done, we have another pipeline which will deploy all our Helm applications. So we have the Kubernetes applications which are deployed through Helm. So we have another pipeline which runs those applications. Okay, now this is done on a blue environment this month. The next month, we do the same thing. First, the Terraform pipeline on a green environment. It runs a Terraform pipeline, creates all the infrastructure, installs all the infrastructure related applications, and then we run another pipeline that installs all our Kubernetes applications using Helm. So that is what we do. So we build pipelines. The objective of building pipelines is that you can repeat the task, right? So that is what we do.
Yeah. And one more question I had, like, for what purpose we are using this bucket?
Okay, so the bucket we use is because let's say we have an application. We have a CMS app, content delivery, content management applications. So they need to store their media, static media. Okay, that media is stored in S3 bucket. So that is just a scenario. It has no relevance in our course. It is just a scenario where an application would use a bucket. That's all. If you don't want to use the bucket, you don't use it. It's just a story for you to build up. That's all.
So
Okay.
just to make it little for layman, suppose if you have a website called Amazon.com, so there in Amazon.com there are a lot of images for each product. Those images you will keep it in S3 or in that bucket. Okay.
Sorry, sir. Can you please repeat?
Suppose Amazon.com. In Amazon.com there are products which you want to purchase, but there will be images, right? You will see that images. Yeah. So where will you keep that image? In this bucket.
Okay, I got it.
All right, guys. So we will start off with
I think we can start.
Yeah. So as I said, we will start off with Terraform. And why do we use Terraform? To build our infrastructure. And then we will work on a mini project, a lot. In order to do this, we'll do a lot of mini projects where at the end of the day, we'll be able to build our infrastructure. And then we move on to Docker, learn Docker, play around with Docker, familiarize ourselves with Docker, and then eventually move on to Kubernetes, work on Kubernetes, build our projects on Kubernetes, build our CI/CD pipelines on Kubernetes. So the first thing that we're going to do is Terraform.